Welcome to the Book Tea with V. Welcome back to this week's episode of the Book Tea with V. And guys, it's been a minute, but for me personally, this is what I've been reading lately. Guys, I'm in my fantasy era. I reread Iron Flame. I read Blood of Hercules. I've read, what was the other one called? It will come to me, I hope. Neverkeep. I'm obsessed. Like, I now think this is my official fantasy romance era. So if you have any recommendations, please message me. But also, I do have a YouTube video coming out soon. But let's get into the most exciting part of this whole episode. Today's guest, it's a dream come true. And when I originally thought about interviewing authors, she was one of the first authors I thought about, simply because not only do I love all of her books, but two, I sort of credit her for how I got into a relationship and have the relationship I have now. I'm of course talking about TL Swan. TL Swan, welcome to the Book Tea with V. It is a pleasure to have you today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. And look, I'm just going to jump straight in as I always do, because for me, it's always so interesting to see where each author starts. And I know that you were a psychologist. And yeah. I mean, that's just interesting in itself. But what had you writing your first draft? You obviously had this career. So where did it change?
You know, it's funny. So my husband and I actually bought a business, and it was not the success story we dreamed of. And we actually lost everything. And we found ourselves in our early 40s and, you know, the hardest workers you could ever imagine. And everything was just going down the tube. We'd lost everything that we'd earned up until that point. So I was looking for something to pay my credit card off. I was like, I need something. Anyway, I read a book called The Secret. Have you read that by Rhonda Byrne? You know,
I haven't read it, but I know it's very widely
popular. You need
to
read it. It will change your life. It changed my life. Anyway, it's all about, in life, we're given signs where we're going to go and we miss them. We don't know to look out for them. But all these little things that happen every day, it's actually a sign telling us what to do. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to get a sign. I'm going to get a sign what I'm supposed to be doing. And 2 weeks later, I was cleaning out my garage. And it's the weirdest thing. I found this box that had been there since I moved out of home when I was 19 and had, you know, teddies and boots and, you know, just stuff you have when you're a kid, all these stacks of books and everything. And at the very bottom of it was a diary with a pen in the middle. And I opened I'm pulling all this stuff out like I have lived in 30 houses. So I don't know how I had never seen this box before. And I opened this book, this diary where this pen was, and it was a story I had written when I was 17 about Joshua Stanton. Wow. And I was like, oh, I wanted to be an author. Anyway, I sat on the garage floor in the cement and I flipped through this book, and it was chocked with all these stories that I'd written when I was a kid, like 17, 18-year-old girl. And I was like, this is the sign. Anyway, so I sat it on the balcony and I kept cleaning out the garage. And then that night I went inside and I was like, I'm just going to have a crack. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm going to have a crack. So I didn't have the Word, you know, the Microsoft Word program, and I couldn't afford to buy the program. It was $270. So I downloaded a free trial for 30 days. And I was like, okay, I've got 30 days to write a book. Let's go.
That is incredible, though. And I feel like that's obviously where it started and then just grew from there. But you also just mentioned that you found this box full of books. So were you always a big reader before?
Always. I've always read. Before I was an author, I used to read a book a day. You know, I was one of those girls that's, you know, started with Trixie Belden and, you know, all the old-fashioned crime things. And then I went through a crime stage, and then I found romance, and that was my jam. So I was reading romance long before 50 Shades came out, and yeah, I just love it.
What would you say is your favorite book of all time?
Pride and Prejudice, Jane Austen. Anything Jane Austen is my favorite. Yeah, I would say Pride and Prejudice. So many people say that it's so cliche, but it's just such a great, you know, it was my first broody alpha male that I kind of just fell in love with, and that's my favorite kind of character to write still to this day, grumpy and silent. And so yeah, that would be my favorite. My actual very favorite book is The Secret, because it changed my life. Like, it just changed my, anyone who hasn't read it, please read it. It's just fantastic. And then I love self-help books, which is the weird thing. So Diary of a CEO, Atomic Habits, things like that, that's my jam. I just read that the whole time.
And I guess you wouldn't really have that much time to read now, but what was the last book you read?
Well, it's funny because I haven't read a romance book since I started writing 10 years ago. And
That's quite a thing.
It's a sacrifice, I tell you. The reason I don't do it, it kills me. Like, it's the hardest thing I've had to do. It's the hardest thing about writing for me. But I think just because I know how well the brain works, I know how the brain works. I probably know too well how the brain works.
Mm-hmm.
And when we read something, we retain 70% of that information in our brain. So for me, knowing that, if I was going into writing a book and I came up with a scene, I would be debating in my head, did that come from my memory part of my brain, or did that come from my thought process part of my brain? And I never want to have that in my head where I'm worried that, that scene come a bit too easy to me.
Yeah.
Maybe that's in another book. Or, I'm just so paranoid that I would accidentally retain something that I've read and I would rewrite it without knowing. So I'm too scared. I actually, at the moment, I read self-help books, and that's what I love. I am actually reading, I've just started Fourth Wing.
Ooh.
And I haven't read a book. I love fantasy, and I'm up to chapter 6. And Rebecca Yarros is giving me a major confidence crisis because, goddamn, she's good. It's just like,
I understand why it's so popular. It's just, I feel like it just came out of nowhere as well. It was just all of a sudden, have you read Fourth Wing? And it was just everywhere. But then
I followed Rebecca for a long time. I've known Rebecca for a long time, and her romance book. So what I do when I see a romance book that's all the hype, I read the first chapter and I'll read the last chapter.
Oh.
So it's like I get a glimpse of how people write, and I say to the girls who work for me, what happens in the middle? But I don't actually have their words in my head. So I knew that Rebecca was a very gifted writer, but her world building in Fourth Wing is next level. I'm just like, I'm reading it. Last night I was lying on my couch reading it, and I was like, God damn, how does anyone compete with this shit? Like, it is so good. So
you're like, okay, I'm putting this book down now. I'm just going to read the end. But that will send you through a loop too, the ending of that one.
Yeah.
But I guess you love writing contemporary, and you just said as well, the Stanton series, you were 17. What was your thought process? Can you remember why you even...
No. And, I wrote the Mr. series when I was 17. All of the books I've rewritten are books that I wrote when I was a kid. And obviously they were very young versions of what they are now, and I wouldn't have had the confidence. I'm actually glad I didn't try and publish them back then, because they would have been very vanilla. But yeah, I don't know. And what's funny is that day when I downloaded the Windows program onto my computer and I wrote my first scene, it was a virginity scene, a virginity sex scene in a tent between first cousins. And I'm like, what? Like, I look back now and I'm like, oh my God, I was like tapped. Like, who writes that as their first thing they write? So it was balls to the wall from day one.
and obviously, like, never looking back since. That's what you've been doing.
No. It's, for 3 or 4 years, I didn't sell any books. I just kept writing. I would sell 4 or 5 books a week, or 3 or 4 books. I had a lot of people in reviews saying her books are too long, they're too intricate, her stories are too twisted, they go on forever, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, you know what, this is my midlife crisis. I'm writing for me and what I want to do. And if they don't like it, that's okay. I'll just keep writing how I like it.
Yeah.
And then I wrote a book called Dr. Stanton. I don't know if you've read that. And he changed my life overnight. So I uploaded it I wrote that book in 2 weeks. It just
Wow.
was just poured out of me. Like all the other books were months and months, and this book just like, and it was my first book. So the image, the cover of the image, I just love that cover. And I was like, I saw that image and I was like, I just love this image. I did a reverse trace on it, and it was from a French Vogue shoot. And I was like, you never know. I'm just going to contact this. You just never know. Like the stars have got to align for me soon.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, yeah, sure, you can have it. And I think she gave it to me. She said, if you cut the head off it, you can have it for $200 or something. And I was like, oh, it's a sign. It's a sign, right? This book's going to go great. I uploaded it. I went to sleep. I woke up and it was 30 in the store.
Wow.
And it just killed it. It stayed there for 3 months. Montlake, Amazon's romance,
Yep.
they read it. They contacted me. It changed my life, that book.
Oh, it's just so inspirational. And I think as well, like people probably start, I mean, you'll know better than I do, but I started with the Miles High series. And I have to thank my best friend for that, Haley. She was like, we were working together at the time. And she's like, I was bored. I was like, I'm bored of what I'm reading. She's like, TL Swan, go and read this, the stopover and, go from there. You'll fall down the rabbit hole. And I was like, okay. And you were just saying before that people said it was long and they were too intricate in the stories. I loved it because they were so real. I felt like the characters had real problems. And she is a Jameson man. Me, it was Tristan. And I always say, and having the chance to say this to you now is just so funny because I credit Tristan Miles for why I have the partner I do now. And that the takeover, absolutely I do. I felt like before I read the takeover, I thought I wanted someone broody and not necessarily grumpy, but I wanted someone that was a certain type of way. And I read the takeover and Tristan Miles, and I was like, that's what I want. That is exactly who I want. Within a year of reading that book, I have my own Tristan Miles.
So many people say that to me. So many people say, I had in my head what I thought I was going to get. And I read The Takeover and my whole outlook on men changed. And then I went for the softer guy and I'm so happy. And it's so funny. It's my personal favorite is Elliot.
I do
Um,
have a hate and love relationship with Elliot, but the more I reread, I love him.
I kind of feel like Elliot to me is the realist, as in if you had been in love with someone from afar for so long and that
Mhm.
opportunity came up and you just met someone else, I feel like everybody would have pursued that, like anybody would. What I love about Elliot was he had the dream. He had the
Yeah.
dream of love. He had that all encompassing love in his mind, and he wasn't going to settle until he got it. So I feel like from a romance reader kind of version, I just love Elliot, but I'm actually married to Jamison, so it didn't work out for me. I didn't meet Tristan until after I was already married.
That's a shame. That's a shame.
Mm,
But do you know what?
mm.
Jameson's not bad. Would you say he's your favorite man in the series? Like, do you have a favorite book or a man of that series?
I have my favorite story is the Casanova.
Hmm.
Um, just like I said, I just love that fated love kind of thing. Um, Relatability, I probably relate to Jamison the most. He's my kind of jam. That's the kind of men that I like to write because they're just feisty and just say what they want. And Tristan was just so lovely to write. So, and I love Christopher too. So
They do. They
I'm
have that element of fun too. Like there's
yeah.
scenes like, for example, when Elliot is calling for the ambulance and he's just being an absolute diva. I think why I love TL Swan men so much is because they're really, gruff and they're grumpy, but they are the biggest, funniest divas you will ever meet as well. It's hilarious.
I get told that all the time too.
But I also love the Mr. series. We've got to talk about the Mr. series because
Yeah,
Mr. Masters is the reason I love age gap and the nanny trope.
me
Hands
too.
down. Oh my
I
God.
love him. I love Julian. He's I feel like that book changed my life as well. And it's such weird. So you go through these things when you're an author, you kind of write books and you plod along, and there's certain stages in your career that things change. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And when I wrote Mr. Masters, I'd had a little bit of success with Dr. Stanton and things had been going okay. And as soon as I wrote Masters, everything changed.
Yeah.
It was like, okay, let's go. So I kind of knew then where I sat, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
In the romance genre, I kind of, it had cemented to me where I wanted to be. So yeah, I love him. My favorite Mr. is Sebastian.
Do you know and again, I feel like you like the ones that make us really angry, but we
Yeah,
can't help but love as well.
no, I like the hot, grumpy ones. I don't even know why, because in real life, you know, when men are being grumpy, I'm like, oh, sod off. I didn't want to talk to you.
This is fiction, like
Yeah,
enough.
yeah. So I don't know.
But we
Yeah,
have Mr. Prescott coming about.
I'm writing that at the moment. So,
What can you tell us? I know that you have to be tight-lipped. It's so soon, but what are we to expect?
well, whenever I write a hard man, a really dominant, strong alpha man, it usually takes me 3 or 4 writes to get, and I mean, write the whole book, read it, not happy with it, go back to the beginning and start again.
Okay.
And I did that with Masters. I did that with Garcia. I did it with the Italian. I did it with, I've done it quite often. I've done it with Edward Prescott. So I wrote it, got to the end, and I was like, that's not how I see him. Like, because when you're writing it, you think that you're portraying it how you see it. And I was like, no, I'm kind of 20 degrees to the left on him. I'm not right. So I'm in the process of rewriting it, and I love it. I've said to my girls who work for me, if this isn't my best book, I'll eat my hat. So I don't know. We'll see.
That is big. And what's her FMC like? Is there anything you can tell us about the lady of this book?
So have you read my Christmas list? His Christmas list, my Christmas book?
Not yet.
So the first 6 chapters are in that. So you will get to read it. It goes live on the 15th. It's only live for 28 days every Christmas. The first 6 chapters, you will get to read the first 6 chapters. So,
well, it's funny you bring that up because last year when this happened, we had the bonus, and I remember reading those couple of chapters like, this is cruel. I need to know what happens now. And that beautiful pink cover of the bonus. Congratulations, by the way, because I see it everywhere in bookstores in Australia here, as well as the Mr. series. I love seeing the new covers are beautiful, but the bonus was something else. I just felt like it really did live up to those chapters because it was the build up. That must be so nerve wracking for you to go, right, here's a little bit of it.
It's funny because the Christmas book, and I've stopped fighting it now, so I don't worry about it like I used to. What happens is I start the book out as, 3 to 4 chapters. But what happens very quickly with the books that stick with me is I want to keep writing. And this Mr. Prescott the bonus was supposed to be 4 chapters in that Christmas book. It was, and I got to the office scene, and then we were in there, because I just write, like I kind of loosely plot, but I just write. And then we got in the elevator, and when he's like there on the way down, and I was like, oh my God, this is a full book. And I had the conversation with the girls, this is a full book. Like I want to hold it out of the Christmas book because I want to write the whole thing. And they're like, no, just put it in because everyone will just love the little teaser and we'll just see how it goes. And I didn't get fried like I thought I was going to be. People kind of loved it, and it made the release a bit special. So the Prescott is in it again, and Brunetti is in it again. And Brunetti's book has just blown my mind with how that's turning out. So I'm like, oh, I don't know. Hope they like it.
Well, I think there must be pressure to some characters that we've seen along the way, and we're like, right, we want, books for those. Is there that added pressure where you're just like, okay, I know people love this character?
I kind of feel like as cliche as it sounds, the better you do in your career, the higher the pressure gets. Because every good book you put out that people love, they expect the next one to be better. They expect the next one to be better. You can't just put out, and I try my hardest to make every book better. I'm not saying it is, but I try so hard, and I'm my own biggest critic. But it does get to you when you put a new book out and people say, but he's not Tristan Miles. Because you've just put 8 months of hard work into this character, and he's a different character. He's not Tristan Miles.
No.
He'll never be Tristan Miles, but people always compare authors' books.
Mm-hmm.
And the only way I can explain it is it's like people saying when you have your third baby, but he's not your first. He'll never be your first.
And you're
He's
like,
never
really?
well, he's good in his own way. Like, come on. So it does get to you. Like, I go through stages where the pressure is really hard. And then I come out of it and I'm like, it's okay. It's fine. Like, I couldn't have worked any harder to get this book as the best it could be. So if it's not well received, there wasn't anything that I could do about it.
No. And I feel like as well, there's, with the authors that I've interviewed before, they're like, Goodreads and reviews, like they'll read a couple, but other than that, they stay away from it because there is that unfortunate negative side to it. It must be so rewarding and amazing, and obviously it's the life that you want. But there is that bit where you're just like, oh, come on.
Well, what kind of gets me is I have, as all authors do in my position, we have groups of people that openly hate us and openly hate our books. And they rush to download them when they download. Like when they go live, they rush. And then they're like, TL Swan wrote such toxic man, I'm never reading her again, blah, 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 1 star. And I'm like, you read every single book, bitch. Like,
yeah.
I know you're coming back for the next one. Like, I know it. So don't tell me you're never reading me again because you like to be toxic about my toxic men. So...
And do you know what I was reading a review just the other day, and I'm so lucky that I've learned not to be too biased with it and not to listen too much to other people's opinions, because I'm like, it's fiction. It was a completely different book, but someone was like, he was toxic, and I'm like, yeah, that's what made it great. Like, it's not real. It's it's all on page. It's all safe. It's fine, but people.
What amazes me is, do people really, I get bashed for writing millionaires and exotic lifestyles with strong men. And I'm like, do you really want to read about a wimpy plumber?
No. Oh, sorry.
I don't. I don't want to read about a soft little guy and they meet and they fall in love and that's the end of it. And what's the point? Like, I want fantasy. I want the exotic big story. So...
Well, I know personally, I read for an escape, and that is you being a billionaire or mafia woman's wife.
Yeah.
I
want the opposite. I want to live the plain, boring life, but I don't want to read about it.
Exactly. Exactly. Now, with your books, because there's a few of them now, is there a series or book or characters that you just go, those are my particular babies?
Look, I wouldn't say it's my best written work because it was my first series, but it is the first book that I found, the first series that I wrote. So I would say Joshua and Natasha from the Stanton series. We are actually you're getting a scoop here because nobody else knows this. We are actually in the process of, I'm tightening the writing. So because when you read my current books and you go back to that, the writing is very wordy and stilted and just I kind of ramble a bit. But it's because I didn't know what I was doing. So we are tightening that. So if anyone wants the original copies,
get in now.
Get it now or get the paperbacks now because in 6 months they won't be live. So we're just we're tightening it. It's the same story, but there's probably 4 words in every sentence too much.
Yeah. Okay.
And that's just me not knowing what I was doing back then. So I still love it. When I read it, I still love it. But I just and for so many years, readers have said, don't touch it. It's perfect as it is. Do not touch. And I'm like, yeah, but I kind of feel like when I read it, I'm like, that sentence should have ended there. Like, you can't help get better. Your editors teach you as you go and you can't help get better. And, it'd be like you going back and listening to your first podcast.
Please.
You know what I mean? You kind of go back and you're like, oh, what was I saying there? What was I doing?
Yeah.
Like, the same thing.
But yeah, I guess it's as you evolve, isn't it? And then I guess You want it to reflect who you are as an author now. That's
Yeah, and
exciting.
it's kind of, once you know it, you can't unknow it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like when people in my groups, like my group is really active and they're just so fantastic, and they recommend you've got to read the Stanton series. I kind of had that, like to new readers, I kind of had that moment where I'm like, like, there's a lot of words in there, So I want it to be that I'm like, yep, this is the best of my writing and we can't change that.
Oh, I love it. Well, I know people will be excited to hear that news. And it's exciting for you too. I think one of my burning questions for you for this whole interview is I'd love to know what the hardest book has been to write and what the easiest book has been to write for you.
So Find Me Alistair is my favourite book and my hardest book. I don't know if you've read it because I've pulled it off the market
I
because
haven't read it yet.
it's it's a romantasy, so
Mhm.
it's different. It's coming to bookstores in a series, and it's being rewritten. So I pulled it off purposely. For one, the writing wasn't up to the standard of this book, the second and third book, and I didn't want people to have that jolt in time.
Sure.
I want it to be conducive of each other. So I've pulled it, but I just love that book. It doesn't end happily. It's tragic and I was sobbing. I sobbed the whole book. It's not a TL Swan book, as in, but it's my favorite book. And I just cannot wait for that series to come out. My easiest book was Dr. Stanton,
Mhm.
2X. Cameron arrived. He just come to my head and did not leave until it was done. I could not stop writing. I was literally like, so I'll show you. I use a gaming keyboard because
Ooh.
I type too fast for a normal keyboard. So literally, I swear my gaming keyboard was smoking with Dr. Stanton. It was like, could not write in fast enough. No rewrites. It's basically a first run, what you've got.
Honestly, it's such a cool experience to know how that was written and how it all started. But with
Yeah.
Funny Alistair, with the series coming, is
Mm.
it the same characters along the way?
Yeah. So I can send you a copy of it if you want to read the original.
I mean, I would
Yeah,
never say no because I guess people will want to know, is there potentially a happy ending in sight? Or
I can't. If you know the story, you know the story. It
Mhm.
is. I can't give away any
Yeah.
spoilers, but I can say that it is tragic, beautiful love. Like it is just, it's beautiful. So it is. It's the kind of story that makes me go, when you read and you hold your breath. Like it's
Yes,
just, it's a different. It's yeah. I can't tell you, but
I
I'm
understand.
excited. I'm excited to read. I will say that my readers can trust me. If
Mhm.
if that if
That's
that makes
lovely.
sense to you,
That's enough for me.
my
Mhm.
readers who know me can trust that by the end of the journey, I'm going to deliver. But I can't say any more than
Fair enough.
that.
And I was just saying the other day about books that make you work for it. There's something about the books that just push you to your limits, make you work so hard, and they're the ones that stay with you, the ones that had
Yeah,
you crying, just on the floor,
and the
like you
ones that,
say.
well, you're like furious when
Yes.
you read it, and you want to throw your Kindle, and you're like, this woman is just driving me crazy. And I think that's what Stanton is to so many people, and that's why by the end of those 4 books, people are like hooked.
And it's really exciting because it just goes into the flair of you've got books out now in bookstores as well. There's obviously, more in the pipeline that are coming. How did it feel to actually see them in the bookstores? I know that you did a tour, which must have just been amazing.
Honestly, it's unbelievable. Like it's just been a whirlwind of a year. So the staff at my publisher in Arndell and Keeperton they organised the most incredible tour. We had a billboard in New York. They just did so much work. They designed all my covers, and honestly, I've had the best year. I've had the hardest year and the best year. So it's just been. I looked back the other day. I was in the car thinking back over the year, and I was like, I just actually can't believe any of this happened. Like it's just surreal, crazy.
And so with your writing, obviously it takes up so much of your time. What is it you like to do away from writing that gets you out of that cave to do something separately, even if there is anything?
I like to start businesses. No, I just I'm kind of very business focused, so I kind of I read, like I said, CEO books
Yeah.
and self-help books, and I watch like I like paranormal kind of stuff.
Hmm.
So if I'm going to watch something, it will be something crazy like I don't know Wednesday or like something totally off the wall. I
Different.
don't like watching normal TV. Um, I just sort of see my friends. I will be honest, I'm a workaholic. I work 7 days a week every day, but it's not like work to me.
Yeah, you're
It's
enjoying it.
the only time it's like work is when I think I'm writing good stuff and then I go back and read it and I'm like, this is crap. Why is this so crap? And I'll be like ripping my hair out while I work out what's wrong with it. That's when it's work. But when I'm in the flow and everything's going good, it's the best job in the world.
Are you hard on yourself when you're in that
Yeah.
phase? Yeah.
Yeah. I'm terrible. And, I click into this when I'm editing a book or when I'm like reading something, or I go into this analysis, this critical thinking way, and I read a scene and then I take notes on what's wrong with it. And then I'll read it again and I'll take notes what's right with it. And then I try and work out, like it's like a puzzle. And what's funny is my kids will tell you this, and my staff that work for me. When I'm in this critical thinking mode, watch out, everybody, because I'm critical everywhere. The kitchen's not clean enough. Bedrooms are messy. Everybody needs to do their stuff. Like I'm just crazy. So
Like, oh, mum's editing again.
like, oh man. So yeah, when writing's good, everything's happy.
It's funny how that works. What would be
Yeah.
readers what would readers be surprised to know about you?
Mm, probably that I don't read romance.
That, do you know what? That is actually my biggest one too, to be fair.
Yeah, probably because I don't know of any other authors who don't read romance. They don't read in the genre. But I really feel like if anything, that's been my biggest strength
Hmm.
because I don't know what's out there. I don't know what I'm competing against. I don't know because I often say to the girls, where do I sit in the raunchy factor? Like, am I like really vanilla or am I like, and they're like, you're in the middle. Like you're not too, or some books they'll say, oh, you're up the top, or some books, but I don't know what's out there. Like I never have that thought where I think, oh, I'll write a book about this and that, and then I will never think in my head, oh, that's been done, because I don't
No.
know. So I don't care. So I live in this bubble. So I feel like, and it's also protected my writing style
Hmm.
because other people's way of writing hasn't bled into mine, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So it's kind of kept my originality. So I feel like that's my biggest strength and probably the biggest shock people would find out about me.
It is a shock, but at the same time, I do think you're correct when you say, like, when people read a TL Swan book, you know when it's a TL Swan book. It's just written a certain
Oh, do
way.
you?
Absolutely. Absolutely. There's just, I don't know whether it's structuring or just the way it's written, the characters. And again, it's that realism. I feel like, yes, you're in this fantasy land almost with these billionaires, but the problems that they encounter or in their relationships more so than anything, you're like, it's so relatable. It draws you in. It really does.
Yeah. Yeah, I hope so. That's what I aim for. So I kind of, and people say to me, how do you come up with the dialogue? And I'm like, the men always give me the dialogue. It's just there in my computers. But with the girls, it's kind of like, well, I mean, I'm the girl in the book. Whenever I'm writing a book, I'm the female lead.
Yeah.
So whatever that character's feeling, that's what I write. So, it's funny when I talk to people who read my books and they say, oh, we can tell you're writing one page. We know it's you. And I think, really? What? Why? Like, I just don't
It's
know.
just the TL Swan sprinkle. I don't know. It's just, you can just tell. There's just something about it. Do you find that you take inspiration from your day to day life, not just you as a character, but like conversations you have, places you go?
Yeah, most of my books, I'm very lucky in that I had a wild youth and I've got 10 best friends that I've been friends with since we were 13 years old and we're still all best friends now. And they were all very wild in their youth. So most of the stories or the secondary characters or something within my books is sprinkles of real life and
Yeah.
things that happen to them. And so it's a lot of everything all combined.
Do they read your books?
Yes, and they will ring out and go, "I cannot believe you put that in the book. Oh my god!" Like, because they know it's them.
You're like, no one's going to know apart from us lot, but
Yeah, yeah. When we have a girls' weekend every year, and they literally just rib me the whole time. Like, don't say that. She'll write it. Like, so it's
they keep you grounded if you were ever going
yeah, very grounded. Yeah.
So we've got his Christmas list coming out. And like we were talking about before, there's a couple of stories in them. Is there a story or two stories in particular you're really excited for us to read about?
Yeah, I'm really excited for you to read Brunetti.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Prescott, of course, because that's just naughty. Look, I love my Christmas book. Every year I struggle to take it down because it's just so sweet. And I think this year there's 6 or 7 stories in it, and they're like, I think 30,000 words each book. So it's quite substantial book that you get. Some end and that's the end, and some are preludes to another book. But all of the books end, even if it's a prelude to another book, they end that part of the story.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yes.
Like, it's not like a
super
crazy. Yeah, like it's that little story that's compacted, and you think, oh, I would like to read more on those, but you don't have to.
It's exciting. It's on my TBR for this month, so I'm so excited because I felt like when I read what I did in last year's with the bonus, it just had me hankering for more. Like, it was that perfect amount of tease to get you like, okay, when is the book out? And to follow that journey of, pre-release, when it's released and all that. So you must be very excited.
I am. And when the girls read Brunetti, because it's the last book in the thing, they were all like, what the hell? They were all ringing me up. So yeah, I'm excited.
I am excited for that book because, again, it's just one of those characters you're like, okay, I need it.
And it's going back to Ferrara Land, which I just love. I love being in that world. And there's something about this guy. There's just something. He's got the it factor. Some characters carry it. Prescott's got it too, but it's just, there's something about that book that has me itching to write it.
And I do think he will be in my top 5 TL Swan men. I feel like that from the very beginning. I was like, there is something about you, because right now it is Mr. Masters, and we've got obviously Tristan, Gabriel. It's so hard to choose. It really is hard to choose.
Yeah, I love. It's so funny. A lot of people read the bonus and loved Gabriel, and then they've gone back to read Miles to see Gabriel as the bad guy in the stopover, and they're like, "Oh my god, I can't believe this!" And they're like, "It makes so much more sense now." Like, so
I love him and Claire together too. I love those little moments.
Yeah, me too.
So next year you've got a big year. What can you tell us about it? Are you going to be anywhere at signings? What books do we know about that are coming out?
So in the end of January, I go to London for 2 months to open up the Keeperton office in London, which is exciting. I will be writing while I'm over there. I'm also going to Ireland to stay in Ashford Castle to do research for Alastair.
Oh my goodness.
That's very exciting. So I'm writing, at the moment I'm writing Prescott, then I'm writing the next book in Kingston Lane series. That's exciting. Then I'm writing Alastair's 2 books. So, and Valentino. So I've got a very busy year next year. But I kind of went through a stage where I didn't write much for 2 years. And I will say this openly, I don't try and pretend to be young. I went through menopause, which is not great. PMT for a whole year.
You're like, things are going to...
I know why older women don't write romance. When they hit 45, they start writing crime because they just want to kill all the men. There's no... So I took a year off, and I'm back now, and I'm really happy with the way things are going. So thankfully that's over. But
Oh, I love it. How's your process
yeah.
with that? Because there's a lot going on for you. Do you find that you're writing and then you're like, oh, I'm on to the next thing? Do you do multiple at the time, or you're like, no, I have to focus on
No, I'm like one story at a time, but I do plot in advance. So everything's plotted up to
sure.
12 months in advance. And I've got big books with all pictures and information in them. Um, everything's, yeah. And it's so weird because I can't pick when the stories are coming. Don't ask me how my brain works, but it's like, and I say this to people and they just look at me and go, you're a freaking weirdo. I literally sit down because I've got the book and it's like this big project I work on for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And I sit at my computer and I don't think. It just comes out. I
Wow.
literally, it's like I've got dictaphone. I just type it.
Is it like a scrapbook that you do for
Yeah.
plotting? Yeah.
Yeah. So I write the story out in point form and then I'll have pictures of her house, his house, their friends, what she's wearing, the cars. I put it all together in this big book. And then when it comes to writing it, I'll look through and I'll read everything. And I'll go, let's go. And it just like my brain puts the puzzle together in my head and it just comes out. But sometimes my brain doesn't put the puzzle together in my head. And I know by 5,000 words if it's time or not.
Yeah.
And I'll have to put it away and come back later. And it's really frustrating because, I see authors, I'm writing 8,000 words every single day and I'm this book's this month, this is that month. And I would love to be like that. I just can't because it's, like I said, it's an organic process that I can't force. I can write a book that's forced, but it's just missing that magic.
Yeah.
Like it just doesn't have that it factor that makes me want to read it and read it again. And I think that's the biggest compliment my readers give me is that many of them reread my books so many times. And if I was forcing it, there's no way they would want to.
Very, very true. Very true. I feel like if someone's an aspiring author, it might be really overwhelming to go, oh, I've got this idea, but then they go to a point. How do I, sometimes it is better to go, right, leave that there, try other things and see what, you make.
Yeah. And it's that's why I don't release my schedule and I don't do a pre-order and I just let myself go because I've learned there's nothing worse than the pressure.
Yeah.
I've got to upload this file on the 22nd of January, blah, 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 and this is that, and it's not happening and everything's stressful. Whereas I just would rather enjoy the process and then at the end go, okay, let's just do this.
Yeah, it's going to be ready for then because I've already done it.
Ready and, let's go. So.
Oh, I love that. Are you going to be anywhere? Are there any conventions you're going to or signings?
Well, I am booked in to go to Canada, which I'm hoping to still get to, but I've got another project on the go that I can't talk about. And it depends how that's going and where that is in timing, whether I'll be able to go or not. So I will know that by the end of February. So I've not pulled out for that reason. I am going to Rare in Melbourne, Australia. But I kind of have pulled back from group signings to a degree, simply because we've got so much stuff going on with Keeperton.
Yeah.
And, opening offices. We opened our Washington office in DC. I can't commit to signings. And this sounds so wankerish. Like, I know this sounds so wankerish, but I can't go to a signing now without at least 4 or 5 helpers because my pre-orders are over 1,000 books and it's just crazy. For me to fly 5 people to the other side of the world and five hotel rooms, it is very expensive for a one-day signing where I literally get to spend 40 seconds with each reader.
Yeah.
I would rather spend that money and do a tour where I can talk to everyone.
Very true.
I know that sounds ridiculous, but I'm at that stage now where it's like I want quality time with my readers over quantity. And, these big signings where there's 80 authors, they're fantastic and I love them. But sometimes it's not economical to do that
Yeah.
when I've got to take so many staff. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
absolutely. Absolutely. But it
yeah,
sounds like there's something in the works there as to why, you know.
there is. There is. I've got some private tours coming up, and yeah, lots going on.
Oh,
I'll
exciting.
still be around. I'll still be around.
Oh yeah, we'll still see you. And do you know what? I
Yeah,
think the
yeah.
readers will be happy just to receive some books. So I think I can safely say from all of us that we're just excited for anything that you give us.
Well, let's hope.
Don't think on it too much. Thank you so much. Honestly, it's been such a pleasure to talk to you today. And look, I'm cheeky. I'm going to pull this offline and see what I can get extra, because that's just who I am as a person. So, you know, we'll do what we can do. But thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
As
Really
always.
appreciate
Hopefully
it.
we can do it again.
Yes. Thank you.
Honestly, I'm still reeling from being able to speak to TL Swan. I adore her, I adore her books, but it goes further than that. Like, even the work that she does with aspiring authors, it's just so amazing. And I don't know, am I inspired? Am I maybe thinking about writing? Stay tuned. And guys, we're in 2025 now. There are so many amazing releases coming out, and I'm gonna have to do a full length video. So this is gonna be coming to YouTube. So be sure to subscribe, because it's gonna be a long one. There are so many, but that's not a bad thing. But of course, I'm gonna leave you with a couple right now. So these are some of the releases I cannot wait for this year. Okay, so of course we're going to start with Rena Kent. So we've got Kiss the Villain, which is out in March. We've got Beautiful Venom, which is May, and then Sweet Venom, December. So we've got 3. We're spoiled, and I love it. My Dark Prince by LJ Shen and Parker S. Huntington. I need this book like I need water. I love this series so much. This one's going to be out early Feb. The Hermit by Michelle Hurd. This is the first book in her new Mafia series. I don't think you understand how much this new series is going to be my new personality. And lastly, of course, I have to mention Onyx Storm by Rebecca Yarros. This book, by the time this episode comes out, it's going to be out. And if you haven't heard from me for a few days after this book comes out, I'm okay. I may not be okay, but I'm okay. It's going to be a banger of a year. Thank you so much for all of your support on the podcast. If you want to subscribe to my YouTube, please do. I'm also on Instagram. And for those of you that do still have TikTok, you can find me at VReads on all of these. That's the tea this week. See you next time.